Good morning, Bills Mafia. We've got the Bills-Eagles pregame show set for you this morning where we're going to go over all the key matchups, give out our pregame superlatives, and of course, share our game predictions. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing on this fine Sunday morning? Thanksgiving weekend is winding down, but perhaps the biggest anticipation of the weekend and the holiday weekend being this Bills-Eagles game taking place at Lincoln Financial Field this afternoon at 4:25 Eastern. Thank you for joining me this morning. I'm your host, Tilt. Judge is not going to be joining us this morning. He has had some personal matters to attend to, and I'll let him kind of explain that once he's back in the fold. Nothing major going on there. I just was not able to make it this morning. So I'll be taking you through the pregame show today, giving you guys the chance, plenty of time to watch the show, catch up on the 1 o'clock games. And then obviously the Bills have the late start today in the afternoon slot at Philadelphia. One of the biggest games on the Week 12 slate for sure. The Eagles come in with the best record in the NFL at 9-1. The Bills are 6-5 and heading into their bye week after this game. So obviously a big game for the Bills in terms of momentum. If you believe in that kind of thing, whether the Bills can take some momentum into the bye week with a win today, or whether their season really becomes on the brink if they're not able to win today. Now, if they're not able to win today, it's not a conference loss, so obviously that helps a little. But to drop the Bills back to 500 at 6-6, a win today, I think, really goes a long way into taking the Bills into the home stretch of the season. So as Brendan looks like he's going to the game today, Brendan P going to the game today, need that W. So hopefully, Brendan, you bring some good luck to the Bills today by going to that game. And of course, we'll start off a little bit by talking about the injury situation and the weather. Some conflicting information out there around the weather reports for this game. Checked yesterday and also checked this morning, and it certainly looks like there is going to be rain for this game during the game time and possibly throughout the entire game. I'm looking at weather.com, so that's a Weather Channel site, weather.com. I think there have been some, other sites reporting maybe the rain was going to hold off until later in the game or after the game. But at least as of this morning, it certainly looks like there is going to be rain for this game throughout the game. Wind, also saw some conflicting reports on that. There were some reports from AccuWeather yesterday that said there could be gusts of up to 30 miles an hour or more, but it looks like the winds will be light, at least, overall throughout the afternoon. 6 to 7 miles an hour really shouldn't be an issue for the kicking game if the winds are that light. I think the real story will be the rain and how that might affect the game plans on both sides. We did see that game the Eagles play last week against the Chiefs was played in some rain and certainly looked like it had an effect on the game plans for that game. A lot of rushing from both sides in that game. The Eagles really had been pretty good at slowing down the run, had held teams under 90 yards for 5 straight games on the ground until that last game against the Chiefs where they racked up almost 170 yards on the ground. Could weather have been a factor in that game plan? Maybe. Could that have just been their game plan? Maybe as well. So it definitely looks like there will be some rain this afternoon, and hopefully the winds will be calm. So that should be interesting. The Bills haven't necessarily played great in rain games in the past, especially at home. They've struggled in some of these weather games, whether it's rain or wind. So it'll be interesting to see how that might factor in. As far as the injuries, let's pull up the Bills injury report. Actually, let's go to the Eagles first. We'll pull up the Eagles injury report first. There's not a ton here. But we'll pull up the injury report for the Eagles first, and just bear with me a bit. I'm kind of doing this on my own here, so just bear with me here a little bit while I get things sort of situated here. Okay, so here's the Eagles injury report. Also, by the way, awful graphic from the official Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles site, right? This it's just horrible to read, terrible font. I don't know. I really like the way the Bills lay out their injury report. Maybe that's getting a little bit into the weeds, but it's not pleasing to the eye. So obviously the big name for the Eagles being out is Dallas Goedert with that forearm. Obviously he has been out for a couple weeks now and looks like he's going to be out for some time. So that's obviously a help to the Bills. We see Devonta Smith pop up on the injury report with the knee, but he has no injury designation heading into this game. So obviously he'll be playing. And then, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, DeAndre Swift, all full practice on Friday and will be playing. First time of the season that DeAndre Swift did pop up on the injury report for the Eagles. He did get a couple limited sessions in Wednesday and Thursday, then went up to the full practice on Friday. So you wonder, and that's an ankle injury. So you wonder if that's a little bit more maintenance related for a guy like DeAndre Swift, who's really been toting the rock for the Eagles this year, near the tops of the league in rushing. And we'll talk about that when we kind of get into the matchups. He's been a nice fit for that Eagles team since week 1, where they didn't really use him, but since week 2, really and onward, they've really handed the backfield over to DeAndre Swift for the most part, and sprinkling in guys like Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. But he did pop up with this ankle injury, so you wonder if in the rain maybe does that have a factor? Is that a factor or not? We'll see. But again, relatively clean injury report for the Eagles. Goddard being the big one missing. So let's go now to the Bills injury report. I'll pull that up. Just so much nicer to look at than the Eagles one. So much easier to look at. Obviously, before we get to the injury report, we do know that the Bills made the couple call-ups from the practice squad. We saw Andy Isabella is getting elevated for this game, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the Bills offense section. And the Bills call up Jamarcus Ingram for this game as well. So with Taylor Rapp being out, as you can see on this injury report, an interesting sequencing of practices for Taylor Rapp here, right? This week, you have the DNP Wednesday, then went up to the limited practice on Thursday, then back down to the DNP on Friday. Is that a setback? I don't know. There wasn't really a ton of reporting on that. But obviously the Bills felt that after that limited practice on Thursday, maybe his neck didn't respond well to the practice, and ultimately he was a DNP on Friday and will be out for this game. The other one is obviously Dane Jackson, who took the big shot last week on that tackle on Jeremy Ruckert. So you see Dane, obviously with the concussion, DNPs all throughout the week, and he's clearly going to be out. Bye week coming at a good time for him. You would hope that with the bye week ahead, and even though he did have the 3 DNPs in a row, that with the bye week ahead, that Dane Jackson will be able to clear protocol in time for the matchup against the Chiefs coming out of the bye. I'm not, saying that is definitely going to happen, but you like to be hopeful in that situation that it will be at least on the upward trend for Dane Jackson coming out of the bye week. And then otherwise, you've got some positive news, right? You've got Micah Hyde coming back this week, the 2 limited practices, and then upgrading to the full on Friday. No injury designation for Micah Hyde in this game, so he will be back. So him and Jordan Poyer manning the safety spots as the Bills will welcome them back against this good duo of receivers that the Eagles have, and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You've got Taron Johnson, who maybe is the most unlikely positive news, I would say, for this game. Very sequential in his practice reps this week, right? You had the DNP, the limited, and then up to the full. He's able to clear concussion protocol, and he does not have an injury designation for this game, which is really welcome news for the Bills. Taron Johnson being there. So outside of Dane Jackson, really, the secondary is in okay shape. You got Rasul Douglas, you got Christian Benford, and Taron Johnson there. So you're like 3 starting corners, right, are going to be available for this game, and your 2 starting safeties are going to be available for this game. So the depth will be tested for the Bills, no doubt, with Dane Jackson out, with Taylor Rapp out. So depth will be tested, and then a bunch of other sort of, I guess, non-storyline injury report items with Josh. He's been on the injury report with the shoulder for a couple weeks now, several weeks now. Sherfield getting 3 fulls and Dorian Williams getting 3 fulls, no injury designations for them. So obviously the IR issues aside, the Bills really just with the 2 key injuries in the secondary, and Dane Jackson, Taylor Rapp, both going to be out for this game. And we'll see if they are able to be back in time for the Chiefs game out of the bye week. So with that said, we'll start getting into the matchups here a little bit. And so again, just bear with me as I try to navigate here by myself for a bit. So the Bills offense matching up against this Eagles defense. Let's take a look at some of the statistics here for the Bills offense against the Eagles defense. And the bad guy says, time to make cheesesteaks out of y'all lineup now, 1 by 1 single file, no hurt shit. Okay. We got men in the kitchen saying Philly defense can be had. Their D-line is awesome, but their secondary, not so much. And I think that's going to be maybe part of the discussion here as we start to talk about the Bills offense against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. Philadelphia Eagles defense coming into this game defensively 17th overall DVOA defense, so a little bit below the midline, 19th in DVOA pass defense, 5th in DVOA rush D. So they've been very good at defending the run. They had limited opposing teams to 89 or fewer rushing yards in 5 straight until that Kansas City game. So the Eagles really had been doing a good job in sort of limiting teams on the ground. So you go back to, obviously, the Rams and Jets aren't world beaters by any means, but 54-89. The Dolphins only had 45 rushing yards. The Commanders only 84. And those are 2 fairly good rushing teams, the Dolphins and Commanders, with the running backs the Dolphins have in Mostert and crew, and then the Commanders with Brian Robinson holding Dallas to 73 on the ground. And then finally the Chiefs with the 168 last game. But other than that, the Eagles had only allowed the Commanders way back in week 4 were the only other game this year where they had allowed over 100 rushing yards. So you wonder, in a game like this where there's rain, is this an advantage for Philadelphia that they've been pretty good and stout against the run, whereas they have been a little bit suspect against the pass. It's interesting. So, yeah, and Sam Howell put almost 700 yards on them in 2 games. For whatever reason, the Commanders have really played the Eagles tough this year. I know they didn't win either of those games, but they were right in both of those games. So really interesting, but just kind of the way it goes with the NFL. As far as the raw statistics, the Eagles are middle of the pack in yards per game allowed. They are the fifth worst passing defense in a yards per game allowed perspective, 248.1. Best in the NFL rush defense in yards per game allowed at only 76.5. So again, that kind of lines up with the DVOA statistics. The Eagles being a much better run D than pass D, but that kind of lines up with the personnel they have. Obviously, guys like Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox in the middle, clogging up those running lanes for opposing teams. Points per game, they're really middle of the pack, 21.2 points per game allowed. The Bills, I would hope, would be able to score 21 plus in this game. You would hope as we get into this, how much the rain affects that, we'll see. But the Bills really should be able to put up 21 plus. And Dennis says, I can't recall the last time the Bills played the Eagles. Makes it hard to know. Yeah, these teams haven't played each other for 4 years. The last time the Bills played the Eagles was with the Bills home game. The Bills were at home. If you remember, there was that nice Devin Singletary reception and juke kind of stutter step that he scored on. And the Bills end up winning that game at home. But that these teams look a lot different, right, from that game. And so I don't know that there's a whole lot you can draw to. Different head coach for the Eagles from the last time the Bills played them. So different personnel on the Eagles, right? AJ Brown, Devonta Smith weren't there. DeAndre Swift wasn't there. Obviously, there's some vets that have been with the team for some time. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, guys like that have been, and a lot of the offensive line, Kelsey. But two different teams personnel-wise from the last time these two teams played. So, I don't know that there's a lot you can draw on going back to that other game, but yeah, either way, this is going to be a tall task. Going a little bit further into some of the statistics on the Eagles defense, third down defense, sixth worst in the NFL for the Eagles, allowing a 43.2% conversion rate on third downs. Conversely, the Bills second best in the NFL on converting third downs. Coincidentally enough, the Eagles are first. I put that out on Twitter. Two best third down conversion teams on offense coming into this game. So this is an area where the Bills should have an advantage, right? On third down on offense. Eagles allowing a lot of first downs, third down conversions, and the Bills statistically have been a really good team at converting third downs. So an area where the Bills, I think if their offense can stay on the field and kind of carry some of that momentum into this week like they did and kind of got on track against the Jets a bit, scoring more touchdowns, obviously, but staying on the field, converting on third down should be it to the Bills' advantage. The Eagles, after that record-setting year last year, 39 sacks on the season for their defense. They're outside of the top 10 after that year they had last year, but they still have two guys in Hassan Reddick with 8.5 sacks and Josh Sweat with 6.5 sacks that are really good at getting pressure on opposing teams' quarterbacks. And you still have Brandon Graham, the vet, who has really done a nice job in kind of rotating in and kind of becoming comfortable with that role as that third pass rusher, third edge guy for the Eagles. And so it's still a very good unit as far as getting to the passer, even though they are kind of coming off that record-setting year they had a year ago. Still a really good team at getting to the passer. Where you look at where the Eagles have struggled, it's been generating takeaways in the passing game, right? Only 5 interceptions on the season. That's the second fewest in the NFL. So you think about the Bills' offense and some of the things that the Bills have done leading up into that Jets game last week. QB1, Josh has made some bad decisions, made some bad throws, given teams, cheap turnovers, I'll call them. And in some cases, maybe some unlucky bounces. But in reality, this is a team that you're going against in the Philadelphia Eagles that struggled to intercept the ball this year against opposing teams. And so if you're the Bills and you're Josh Allen and this offense, like you can't be turning the ball over in any way, but you can't be giving interceptions to this team, bad throws to a team who's really struggled to take the ball away through the air. And especially in a game where this is one of the better offenses, if not the best offense, the Bills will have faced in several weeks, right? I mean, I don't think you can really argue against that, right? This is probably the best offense the Bills have faced since the Miami Dolphins way back when. So do not give this team an easy takeaway through the air. The decision making from Josh Allen really has to be on point today. And as Spin says, I think this is a measuring stick game for the Bills. This game will say a lot about how the next few weeks will go, and I agree. And especially as we're talking about the Bills' offense, I think this is really important, right? To prove a little bit that game against the Jets last week with Joe Brady's first week calling plays as the interim offensive coordinator, you did a good job against a really tough Jets defense. Obviously, the Bills ended up scoring the 3 touchdowns in that game, but settling for field goals early in the game. And that was fine. The way that game played out, that was totally fine. But in this game, in the rain, kicking may be tougher. We'll see again with the wind. It's not supposed to be a huge factor, but this is a measuring stick game for the Bills. And again, as I said at the top of the show, for the offense, especially, this is a game that can really take you into the bye week with a ton of momentum to have that confidence coming out into that home stretch of games where it's been well talked about already how tough that schedule is going to be for the Bills coming out of the bye, going on the road to play the Chiefs. You got to go on the road to play the Chargers. And I know it's not like the Chargers have a huge home field advantage, but you still got to travel to the West Coast. You get home against Dallas, obviously, and you still got to play Miami and New England again. So it's not an easy stretch of schedule. And we know how favorable Miami's schedule looks compared to what the Bills' schedule looks like. So this is a measuring stick game. This is a measuring stick game for the Bills. And Roy says, I think the Bills will need to find a mission to win this game. I'm not banking on that. It's going to be interesting, right? I think because in years past, when we've come up against these really good teams in the regular season, we've been more confident. I can say that probably collectively. I think obviously there are still a bunch of people who are really confident in this team, but I do think by and large the confidence is not as high as it was, right, in past years. Now the game last week against the Jets looked like to be a step in the right direction, but the Bills got to find some consistency and kind of start stacking wins, right? They can't be alternating these wins and losses, and definitely can't be having multiple losses in a row. So the Bills really need to. I think this game is important, not necessarily because it's like the Eagles and they're the 9-1 team, they're the best team in the NFL, or they're a Super Bowl contender. I mean, they are an NFC team, so from a tiebreaker standpoint, it's not going to be a huge factor. But like the Bills don't want to drop to 500 and then coming out of the bye play at the Chiefs and potentially have to, if they lose that game, drop below 500, which would be absolutely crippling to their playoff chances. So this to me is a big game, even though it's not a conference game. It is a huge game for the Bills to take into the bye. So for the offense, especially as we're talking about them now. And the Eagles, like I said, have been good against the run. 29 yards is the longest rush they've allowed all season. That's third best, tied for third best in the NFL. So we start to think about, well, where do the Bills have, a potential advantage here? And you start to dig a little bit deeper into the Eagles defense, and there's a couple areas, right? Dalton Kincaid in the passing game. The Eagles are dead last in DVOA against the tight end this year. If you're looking for a advantage for the Bills, obviously we've talked about the Eagles pass D not being as good as their run D, not having as many takeaways, only 5 interceptions, but specifically targeting the tight end has really worked well against the Eagles this year. Opposing offenses, most fantasy points allowed to tight ends, and the worst DVOA defense against tight ends. So Dalton Kincaid, Duke as they're calling them now, been dubbed that from his mic'd up clip last week. And he's really been coming on, right? And I put on social media 34 catches over the last 5 games on 39 targets. He's averaging 9.7 yards a catch in his last 5 games, has over 350 receiving yards and combined in these last 5 games. He continues to be an ascending player. I know the Bills didn't really go to him at all in the second half last week against the Jets, but really a tone setter for them on offense, and would be kind of nice and maybe a little bit of a, I don't know if it's a mind game or just a little bit of a, a game of some sort, right? The Eagles missing their really, really good tight end in Dallas Goedert would be kind of nice for the Bills to kind of stick it to the Eagles with their own tight end in Dalton Kincaid. And again, Eagles defensively good against the run, not great against tight ends. I think Dalton Kincaid really needs to be a big part of the game plan, and really just generally the passing game needs to be on point today. I'm not hugely optimistic that the Bills are going to be super efficient with the ground game today, but I also don't think that they can go away from it fully, right? It's going to be raining. You do have to stick with it a little bit, right? And hope that maybe later in the game you can pop one. Little bit surprised that Leonard Fournette isn't called up for this game, but the Bills are obviously comfortable going in with Cook and Murray as their top 2 guys, and it will be interesting to see if the Bills continue to sprinkle in Ty Johnson after last week's game against the Jets. Former team, obviously against the Jets, had a little bit maybe more chip on his shoulder to come out and play, but something different, right, from the Bills last week with Ty Johnson. So it'll be interesting to see. And I do like this comment from Cole McMullen. We need to get Diggs the ball more too. He's been relatively quiet recently. He has been. I do think that Diggs will be a focal point today. I do think that we will see. I do think as long as the rain is not affecting the passing game too much, that the Bills will funnel the passing offense through Diggs, through Kincaid. I think Gabe Davis might be due for a bounce back game. The Eagles, again, have struggled a little bit on the boundary and allowing some big plays to wide receivers this year. So if there was a game for Gabe Davis to kind of have a little bit of a spark, add a little bit of a spark to this offense, this could be the game. And then Khalil Shakir continues to impress. Obviously only had the 3 catches last week, but over 100 yards in the long touchdown. He can work the middle of the field as well, along with Kincaid. So it'll be really interesting to see how much the Bills come out and balance their run game against this really good Eagles rush D, how much they stick with it versus how much they really just go after the Eagles secondary and coverage linebackers. So my thought would be that the Bills come out with a fairly pass first approach in this game, play to your strengths, play to the matchup, and that would seem to make the most sense to me. This is interesting, Roy. How cool would it be if the Bills pulled off a Philly special today? Could the Bills troll the Eagles with something like that? Will be interesting. Yeah. So, but I do think, before we move on to the Bills defense, I do think it's really important for Josh to play another clean game today. Obviously, he threw the 1 interception last week on the Hail Mary before the half, which, whatever, it's an interception. I get it. But the Bills really need to play a clean game today. This is important for a number of reasons. The Eagles not being great on third down defense, the Eagles secondary not being great this year and taking the ball away. Do not give them easy yards. Do not give them short fields. That's certainly something that you don't want to do if you're the Bills. And Charles makes a good point here. Free Josh Allen's legs. We need it. And we've been kind of maybe seeing that a little bit in spurts recently where he's been very selective. And this is somewhat play calling and obviously somewhat, the off script stuff. But this could be a game where that maybe comes a difference, right? Both of these quarterbacks are pretty good running quarterbacks. Hurts obviously still somewhat dealing with that knee issue he had before his bye week, but not on the injury report. So, yeah, whichever quarterback maybe can make a few plays with his legs could be a difference as well. So as we now kind of turn our attention to this Bills defense against the Eagles offense, I do want to kind of start with a little bit of maybe a narrative buster, right? There's been a lot of talk made this week and a lot of things on social media. You all have probably seen it, right? Comparing Josh Allen to Jalen Hurts and all this stuff, and people talking about how Jalen Hurts is doing such a better job of protecting the football than Josh Allen. He doesn't put his team in harm's way, blah, blah, blah. In reality, total turnovers of the season, Josh Allen has 15, Jalen Hurts has 12. And Josh Allen's played one more game, and he's thrown 55 more passes than Jalen Hurts this season. And I know he's played one more game, and that should be a factor, right? And thrown 55 more passes. So this whole narrative around Josh Allen being so much of a bigger turnover machine than Jalen Hurts, it's kind of false, right? I mean, yes, Josh Allen is tied for the league lead in turnovers with Sam Howell, but it's not like Jalen Hurts has been particularly great at protecting the football this year. 12 turnovers of his own, 9 interceptions, 3 fumbles. Josh has 12 interceptions, 3 fumbles. Okay, so, and again, you factor in that the Bills, Josh Allen's had 55 more passing attempts. They played one more game. It's really not that different between these two quarterbacks from a turnover perspective. And Spin says Hurts is not in the same league as Allen. A Bills win would make the bye week a whole lot more enjoyable. And then Call says, so sick of people talking about Allen's turnovers. Yeah. And look, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. I'm not trying to say the turnovers aren't an issue, and obviously need to limit or eliminate those completely in a game like this today. But to say that Jalen Hurts is like so much better at protecting the football than Josh Allen, that to me is false. And also, you have to take the good with the bad, right? I mean, Josh Allen leads the league in total combined touchdowns as well. So we've somewhat overlooked maybe in the past the turnovers from Josh Allen because the good had so much outweighed the bad, the touchdowns outweighing the turnovers. And even this year where the Bills are only 6-5, and it seems like they've really had some pretty costly turnovers at times, like he still leads the league in total combined touchdowns. And I know, he's played one more game than a lot of these teams, but that's the facts, right? And you take the good with the bad. A lot of players have had turnover issues this year. Mahomes, Hurts, like they all have had issues at times. So while I'm not absolving Josh Allen of his turnover problems, the fact of the matter is that Jalen Hurts against this Bills defense is not immune to giveaways, right? And so as we start to talk about this Eagles offense, let's take a look at some of the numbers, right? DVOA, they're 6th overall. They're a great offense. 9th in pass, 5th in rush. They've had a pretty high variance week to week in their DVOA. That tells you that there have been some games where they've been inconsistent, but ultimately their ground game has kind of has pulled them through, right? They're 9th overall in raw statistics from a yards per game standpoint, middle of the pack in passing yards per game, 8th in the NFL in rushing yards per game. So they're a good running team with DeAndre Swift, obviously. From a points per game perspective, they're actually just ahead of the Bills, 27.3 points per game, which is 5th in the league. Bills 26.7 right behind them. You start to dig in a little bit more to the Eagles' rushing attack, and while from a raw statistics standpoint, they are good, they are near the tops of the league. You start to look at it, they have the 6th most rushing attempts in the NFL, even at only 10 games played. There's some teams that still haven't had their bye, like the Bills, Cardinals, etc. But they haven't been as efficient, maybe, as some other teams, averaging just 4 yards an attempt. Now, some of that's tush push. I get that. Some of that's these short yardage things where they're only getting 1-2 yards, whatever. But that is something to keep an eye on, right? The efficiency of the run game. And the efficiency of the run game is something that the Eagles have really been able to get around by just having this volume, right, of rushing and the tush push and being a really good 4th down conversion team. They're the best 4th down conversion team in the NFL at 13 for 17 on the year. A lot of that have been tush push plays. I get that. But that's something to pay attention to, right? Is how efficient this Eagles rushing attack can be against the Bills, who from a run D standpoint had played pretty well against the Jets last week, and going to need that to continue, right? We're going to have Linval in the middle there. We've got Ed in there, who's played an awesome game last week. Bernard back to full health, right? Going to be coming downhill, hopefully filling some of those running lanes. The Bills really need to contain DeAndre Swift today. DeAndre Swift has been really good at kind of making yards out of plays that really where there's not much there. And the Eagles' offensive line is very good. We know that. So the Bills' defensive line will have their hands full. But again, keep your eye on that rushing efficiency throughout this game on both sides, right? For the Eagles and for the Bills, that could be a difference. Now, the other thing here with the Eagles, best team in the NFL, third down conversion rate. Best team in the NFL, 48.2%. Best in the NFL, Bills second at 48.1, so just behind them. And I mentioned already the Eagles' best team in the NFL on fourth down conversions, 13 of 17, 76.5% on fourth down conversions. You can say what you want about the tush push. You can say it's stupid. You can say whatever, look at the stats without it. But like the fact of the matter is like you have you can't look at the stats without it. Okay. It's a play that they use. It's a play they're very good at. The Eagles are very good at converting third downs. They're very good at converting fourth downs. The Bills defense has to be ready, and the Bills defense has to get off the field on third downs, especially today. This is one area where we start to talk about, okay, the Eagles are the best team in the NFL on third down conversions. The Bills are the second best team. But when you look on the flip side, the Bills are middle of the pack in third down defense, 15th. Eagles 6th worst. So both teams really good at converting third down. Bills a little bit better at preventing third down conversions than the Eagles. So to me, one of the big storylines of this game is going to be third downs. I think when you kind of look at the end of this game, and the Bills really got a gift last week. The Jets 0 for 11 on third downs, but 4 for 5 on fourth down. So again, a team that struggled on offense but converted their fourth downs. The Bills really need to be good on third down today, third down defensively. And I think when we start to look at the storylines that come out of this game, when we look back at who won, who lost, what were some of the key factors in this game, I think whichever offense, or I should say, whichever defense does a better job at getting off the field on third downs, preventing the other team's offense from a high clip third down conversion rate, will be the team that ultimately has maybe the better chance of success in this game. So, look, if you can hold the Eagles to, under 40%, under 30% even, but under 40% on third down, I think is going to be a big factor. And Aaron Quinn comes in and says pressure on Hurts needs to convert this week, get them in bad spots behind schedule. Yeah, that has to be part of the plan, right, for the Bills defense. And you have to, if you're the Bills defense, get home with your front four. Leonard Floyd playing great. AJ Epinesa playing really good. Look, Jalen Hurts has been sacked the seventh most times in the NFL, 27 sacks, 27 times he's been sacked. So if you're the Bills front four, you can get home with guys like Epinesa, with guys like Leonard Floyd, put pressure up the middle with guys like Ed Oliver. You have a chance to bring Jalen Hurts to the ground. The Bills did a great job in getting to Zach Wilson, 5 times and 1 time to Tim Boyle last week. But that Gents offensive line is almost a 180 from what you're going to see with this Eagles offensive line. So the Bills defensive line, especially the front four, really need to come to play today. And yeah, I get it. Under 30%. We're talking about the Bills, right? Look, yes, the Bills haven't been great at defending third downs. I get that. But like today, they need to step up. So we'll see. And Men in the Kitchen says Hope Vaughn can get going today. We'll see. Like I've changed my expectations, and I'm curious to see what you all think about Von Miller. I've changed my expectations on Von Miller, at least for now, right? I think for me, in the beginning, I was second half of the schedule, ramp up, be ready for the playoffs, to be a closer when it comes to playoff time. The second half of the schedule ramp up maybe hasn't fully kicked in yet. Maybe it's now like an after the bye week ramp up for the last stretch of games, but I've kind of changed my expectations for Von Miller. And like, look, I get the money that you've paid into him and all this stuff, but like coming off that major injury, I'm kind of like now looking at Von Miller as whatever we can now get from him in the regular season as far as efficiency, productivity, etc., to me is a bonus. And then when it comes postseason time, should the Bills get there, that's really where the Bills are going to hope that they can get some more out of Von Miller. But thank goodness for Leonard Floyd. Continues to look like one of the best signings of the offseason for this Bills defense. 9.5 sacks leads the team. AJ Epinesa has played great this year as well off the edge. You got Greg Rousseau, who's still kind of battling through that foot issue to be your edge setter. And Shaq Lawson really played solidly as well. So, look, the Bills have managed, but today they need to get home, right? They need to get home. They need to put the Eagles in unfavorable down in distance, and that will be the storyline as well. If the Bills defense can get a takeaway or two, that would be huge. But ultimately, I don't know. I know Jalen Hurts has the 12 turnovers, but I do think that, you know, this could be a game where ultimately this comes down to third downs and third down conversions. So let's see how the Bills handle that. And Jorge De La Rua says, letdown game for the Eagles today. That would be interesting. And so he says this is a nothing game for the Eagles. They beat the Chiefs last week. They are 9-1. They're comfortably, I would say comfortably, leading the NFC East. Cowboys a little bit behind them, but again, the Eagles, I mean, you can say what you want about their schedule as well. And obviously coming into the season, it was one of the easier schedules in the league. Bills had one of the harder. But if you look at it, the Eagles did what they needed to do against the tougher teams on their schedules, right? They beat the Chiefs, they beat the Cowboys, they beat the Dolphins. So this is a good team. They've beaten good teams. They've beaten the teams on their schedule. And they beat the Chiefs on the road. And so, like, you have to give this team a little bit of credit for doing what they've done this year. They managed to kind of, I'll say, avoid kind of the Super Bowl hangover, right? They were usually these teams that end up losing in the Super Bowl the year prior don't fare so well the season after. And the Eagles have kind of squashed that a bit. And really, maybe we haven't even seen their best football from a passing attack standpoint either. So obviously their defense, maybe not quite as good. They lost some guys, still good at defending the run, and it starts in the trenches, right, for them. So Bills defensive line going to have their hands full with this really good Eagles offensive line, and we will see. And Charles says Eagles in the midst of a more brutal schedule than us. Yeah, I mean, they did get to play the Commanders twice, who gave them a challenge. Obviously, they get to play the Giants twice, which is very nice for them. But yeah, playing the Chiefs, playing the Cowboys, playing the Dolphins, like that's tough. They got to play us, obviously. So yeah, it's tough. And then they play the Niners next week, right? Says Jorge. So yeah, they got a tough stretch, but yeah, they beat the good teams on their schedule so far. So you have to respect that. As we head into quarter till the hour, we'll transition into our pregame superlatives as we always do. And this is where we share our players in different categories that we think could affect this game one way or another. And as always, we will start with our Take Me Higher player of the game. This is a player other than Josh Allen that we need, a star player and a prominent or very important player will say that other than Josh Allen needs to take the Bills higher in order for this team to win today. So put your Take Me Higher player in the comment section. I'll put them up on screen and we'll see what kind of answers we get on that. This was a tough one for me. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play the matchup here. And I've been talking a lot about DVOA defensive statistics for the Eagles. They haven't been great against the pass, dead last against the tight end. Dupe Mania is catching on. I think it's Dalton Kincaid's game to shine here in a rain game where maybe there's a little bit, the passing game's maybe a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, and not necessarily the line of scrimmage, but a little bit more in the intermediate areas. I think Dalton Kincaid needs to show up, convert key third downs for the Bills, continue this momentum that he's on. The Duke Love from last week was obviously on a play where he didn't score, but made a nice little, like, how do you do against some Jets defenders so Shakir could score. But to me, this is a Dalton Kincaid game. Weather, matchup, converting third downs, being important, using his leverage that he's been so good at using this year, feeling the defenders, feeling their leverage, being able to get upfield. To me, this is a Dalton Kincaid game. I could see Dalton Kincaid pushing 100 receiving yards in this game if the Bills come out and are efficient on offense. So, look, I'm really hopeful that Dalton Kincaid can have a big game today. So for me, he's my take me higher player of the game. Up next, we've got our wild card player. This is a player that's maybe like under the radar, player that isn't a typical major contributor, a player that maybe surprises, comes out of nowhere to have an impact on the game, maybe negatively or positively. And so would be interesting to hear from the comments section what you all think about a wild card player for today's game and who that could be for this Bills team. I think, to me, I like, I think Christian Benford, and I think that there's going to be a lot of attention paid to Rasul Douglas after the game he had last week. You're probably going to see a lot of matchups where Rasul Douglas is on A.J. Brown in that zone. And I think you could see a guy like Christian Benford maybe make a play in the passing game defensively against a guy like Devontae Smith or otherwise. I think it's been well documented how good Benford was at taking away the ball in college. He's got ball skills, maybe not to the level of Rasul Douglas, but he's been playing solidly, and he was close to having an interception last week on a play where he dove and just kind of bounced off his hands and a bit into the ground. But if the Eagles want to get this passing game going with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and the Bills can do a decent job in forcing the Eagles into some third and longs, wild card for me could be Christian Benford in this game. And if he could make a big play, turn the tide, maybe make a takeaway in this game, it could be very interesting for the Bills. Roy says wild card Joe Brady, Dennis, wild card AJ Epinesa, wild card Brandon Leonard Floyd. I like these picks on the defensive line. I think it makes sense. Here's an interesting one that maybe should be talked about. Gabe Davis has entered wild card territory. No longer a take me higher player, maybe, but Gabe Davis as a wild card for this game, opposite of Stefon Diggs. A lot of love for the defensive line in the wild card responses, with Linval Joseph potentially shutting the door or slowing down a guy like DeAndre Swift. Jorge says wildcard Rasul or Brown, assuming you mean Spencer Brown. Wildcard Jordan Poyer, he needs a pick. Spencer Brown or the entire offensive lines is Cole. That's going to be, the trenches are going to be something to watch today, right? I mean, obviously in a rain game like this, really important. The Eagles look like they, objectively have the better offensive line. Defensive line, the Eagles probably have a better defensive line as well, to be honest. But the Bills' starting defensive line is not half bad either. So we will see how that turns out. But for me, I'll go Christian Benford in the secondary. I think that the running game is going to be what it is for the Eagles. I don't know, I don't know how great the Bills will be at slowing down the running game in totality. I think if you can make their running game inefficient, that helps you. It gives the Bills a chance on third downs to get off the field. And William with an interesting comment here. If it's raining, I wonder if they use Reggie Gilliam as a wild card. That could be very interesting if the Bills maybe go a little bit of a new look. If they use Reggie Gilliam a bit more. So that would be interesting. Our next superlative is the respect you player from the opposing team, a guy that from the opposing team that maybe is not the star player or could be the star player, but that you really need to respect in this game. And there's a lot of them, a lot of options on this Eagles team, a lot of options to respect. Ultimately, this Eagles team has talent everywhere, offensively, defensively, all levels on both sides. And Charles comes in and says, A.J. Brown, hands down. You look at A.J. Brown, he had that incredible stretch of games, right? Where he had 6 games in a row of 127 plus receiving yards. And his last two, 66 and 8 receiving yards in that last game against the Chiefs. I can promise you that A.J. Brown is going to come out really motivated for this game. And I would imagine the Eagles are going to make a pretty concerted effort to get the ball in his hands. Really fantastic matchup when you talk about receivers in this game. The Bills with Diggs, the Eagles with A.J. Brown. Two of the best in the league and probably, both on their way to another Pro Bowl seasons for both of them. So I really like this one from Men in the Kitchen. Jalen Carter. To me, Jalen Carter is the guy to respect out of all these players. I think maybe we don't talk about Jalen Carter enough. He is the number 2 overall interior defensive lineman per PFF's grading this year. 87.5 pass rush grade from the interior. Highest rated Philadelphia defender per PFF's grading scale. And I know you can take that with a grain of salt, but if you put on the film as well, the guy's just been a menace. So he is their Quinnen Williams. He is their version of that. And he can, I put Quinnen Williams as my respected player for the Jets last week, had a sack early on in the game. Jalen Carter is a guy as well that we need to be cognizant of if you're the Bills, not just because he can do a good job in defending the run, but as a pass rusher up the middle. Mitch Morse, Connor McGovern, Cyrus Torrance, they're going to have their hands full with a guy like Jalen Carter today. So I agree with Man in the Kitchen here. Jalen Carter is going to be my respect you player of the game. Up next, our hottest take of the game. So this is something that maybe is quite unlikely to happen, but will maybe make someone look good if they predict it. And, we obviously always go back and disregard all of our bad hot takes and only promote the good ones because, that's what you do, right? In this game. But anyway, this is tough, right? I don't really know. Honestly, I don't know what to expect from the Bills today. I don't know what to expect really from the Eagles either. I think the team that starts out quicker in this game will ultimately have the most success. So should I say my hot take is that the Bills jump out to a 2-score lead early in the game? Like Bills have a 2-score lead by the end of the first quarter, whether that's 10, 9, 10, 14, nothing. Like I think the Bills can jump out to a 2-score lead in the first quarter if they kind of carry that momentum over from the week prior, get Dalton Kincaid going, big play Gabe maybe has a play or two. Bills offense comes out and really fires off that momentum that they had from last week. So in the spirit of vibes, in the spirit of positivity, maybe my hot take today will be that the Bills have a 2-score lead by the end of the first quarter. Charles G, we won't see a tush push today. Now that is a hot take. How about this one? Brendan says, Bills stopped the tush push twice. That's incredible. Hurts has 2 turnovers and Allen has none. That certainly would be a hot take. Sterling says, Eagles go 0 for 3 on 4th down. Best 4th down team in the league, 76.5%. That would be pretty nice. Bills have been so bad all year in the first half. Hard against the trend. Cover 1. Yeah, I know. And that's why it's a hot take, right? So trying to speak it into existence, right? That would be why we're doing that hot take. Bills scored 20 in the first half. That kind of goes a little bit in line with what I was saying with the first quarter lead. Hot take: Swift will rush for 100 yards and 2 TDs. With the angry face from Roy, yeah, that would be unfortunate. I think maybe not the 2 TDs, right? Because the Eagles tend to, when they get down at the goal line, they tend to just sneak it in, so just push it in. So Swift has been vultured more than several occasions this year down at the goal line. Okay, so finally getting into our game predictions, rounding out the hour here. And I want to thank everyone for really contributing today, this morning. It's always tough with doing these shows solo, but hopefully you've been enjoying yourselves and contributing, and I really do appreciate it. And so as we get to our final sort of topic here, that's the game prediction. Share your game predictions in the comments section. I think today it's really important for the Bills offense to get off to a hot start. And I have to kind of continue with my hot take, right? I think that the Bills offense gets off to a hot start today. They're due. They have momentum from last week, and I know they settled for field goals early in that game, but that was a really good Jets defense. This is a game where the Bills offense can get off to a hot start and score touchdowns. And I firmly believe that if the Bills can get off to a hot start and get that lead, that will be a huge advantage for them and kind of potentially taking the Eagles out of their comfort zone, their running game. Now, they're going to stick to it no matter what for throughout. But if the Bills can even put a little bit of a shadow of a doubt in the Eagles' game plan, get them out of the game script that they love, which is being ahead, running the ball, etc., the Bills have a really good chance to win this game. And so I do think the Bills offense starts out hot. They lose the coin toss. I think the Bills defense, I think the Bills defense starts out. Eagles kick off. The Bills offense starts out. They lose the toss. The Bills offense goes down, scores on the first drive of the game. That's my prediction. Lose the toss. Eagles defer. Bills go down, score on the first drive of the game. Get a 10-0 or 10-0 or 14-3 type of lead after the first quarter and sort of hold on from there as they head into the latter stages of the game. A.J. Brown's going to get his today. There's no doubt in my mind about that after that 8-yard game last week. So, again, contain him. Don't give up the back-breaking plays. Get off the field on third down to the best you can. And AK Cash says, I can't predict. I hope we win. So let's start getting some of these predictions up here. Jorge, 35-31 Bills. Roy, I know, has been a little bit contrarian today in the sense that, I don't think he has the most confidence in the Bills today. Eagles 27, Bills 20. Man in the kitchen, 27-24 Bills because of the rain. If no rain, 35-32. We got Cole saying, I'm going to go 31-27 Bills. Garrick, 31-24 Bills. AK Cash says, I can't predict. I hope we win. And Roy says, no fandom hat for this one. And I respect that, Roy, because there's a, statistically, the Bills are not favored in this game. There's probably a good chance that they get outtrenched today, especially on the Eagles' defensive line against the Bills' offensive line. We'll see, right? But this is why they play them, right? 24-18 Bills, wire to wire, says Sterling. Spin says 35-17 Bills. I am going to pick the Bills to win, but I do think it's going to be tight. I think they get out to the early first quarter lead and hold on. I'm going to predict Bills 23, Eagles 20. I think it will end up being close, but the Bills eventually hold on for a field goal win and win this one 23-20. Roy says, y'all should be happy I'm not picking the Bills. I'm usually wrong with my prediction. So there we go. Line is Philly -3. Yep. And the Eagles are slightly favored in this game. So as we head to the top of the hour, I do want to thank you all. It has been an absolute pleasure doing this pregame show with you all this morning and trying to get a lot of comments up on the screen today, kind of help move the show along and really have you guys feel like you're part of it. So I do want to thank you all. Go enjoy your rest of your morning. Go enjoy the 1 o'clock games. It'll be a long wait till we get to the 4:25 kickoff, but a really anticipated game and a big game for the Bills heading into the bye week. So we'll see. Best of luck to the Bills. Stay healthy in this game. And of course, we hope for that Bills win. So I want to thank you all again. And until next time, go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!